You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
This episode of Mission Log is sponsored by listeners like you. Support us on Patreon. Join us now at patreon.com/missionlog.
This episode is also brought to you by Eagle Moss Hero Collector's annual Summer of Trek sweepstakes. Score the year's best deals on the world's widest range of Star Trek collectibles and enter for a chance to win one of more than 250 incredible prizes, including the grand prize of an ocean view voyage for two aboard the sold-out Star Trek, the Cruise 5. For details to enter, go to www.getyourtrekon.com.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 414, Afterimage.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we look at an episode of Star Trek, examining it for morals, meanings, and messages, and seeing if the whole thing stands the test of time.
Or, sometimes, like this week, we look inward and we see if our delicate psyches can find the strength to carry on with the task at hand. In just a moment, Norman will tell you how to get in touch with us, but before then, a word from our friends at Eagle Moss Hero Collector and the Summer of Trek.
Celebrating the 55th anniversary of the debut of Star Trek, Eagle Moss Hero Collector invites fans everywhere to head back to the bridge to win the ultimate Star Trek voyage.
Norman, it's that time of year again. It's the Summer of Trek. Everybody very excited about the Summer of Trek. It is, of course, that special time of year from now through the end of August when you can score incredible deals on the world's widest range of Star Trek collectibles produced under license from CBS Studios, including, and you've heard us talk about these before and how much we love them, so get the deals right now on the official Star Trek Starships Collection, the official Star Trek Discovery Starships Collection, the official Star Trek Online Collection. Wait, there's more. Official Star Trek Graphic Novel Collection, the official Star Trek Bust Collection, and the all-new official Star Trek Universe Collection. That is, of course, the one that features starships and vessels straight from Star Trek Picard and the soon-to-debut Paramount Plus series Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Eagle Moss has got it all. You know they do. You know that we love them. You know that you love them. So, when you visit www.getyourtrekon.com, you can now enter to win one of more than 250 incredible prizes, including that grand prize of an ocean view voyage for two aboard the sold-out Star Trek The Cruise 5, plus, get this, a $500 American Express gift card. This is a rare opportunity to boldly sail for 7 days and nights alongside more than 20 iconic Star Trek actors and personalities, including George Takei, Walter Koenig, Marina Sirtis, Jonathan Frakes, and more.
I understand that the grand prize is amazing, but if you're not so keen on sailing, two first prize winners will receive an 18-karat gold-plated XL edition of the classic USS Enterprise NCC 1701 from Star Trek, the original series, autographed by Captain Kirk himself, William Shatner.
I know you want this.
I don't sail. I don't float. So yeah, I'd be all over that. But also, just because the hits just keep on coming, 5 second prize winners will be signed up for a 1-year subscription to the Eagle Moss Hero Collector Star Trek Starship Collection of their choice. And it gets even better. Because 50 third prize winners will receive a $50 shopping pass good towards purchases at the online Eagle Moss shop. But wait, there's more, because 200 fourth prize winners will receive a $10 shopping pass.
All right, just a ridiculous amount of cool stuff from our friends at Eagle Moss, so go check them out. For details on ships, official sweepstakes rules, and to enter, because you know you want to, go to getyourtrekon.com. Again, that is www.getyourtrekon.com. GetYourTrekon.com. There is no purchase necessary, and winners will be selected via random drawing from among all eligible entries on Star Trek Day, September 8th, 2021.
Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek, and that's why we want to hear from you. Use Mission Log Pod to give us a like and a share on Facebook and Twitter, then follow and rate us at Apple Podcasts to help others find the show. You can call us on Skype at Mission Log Pod, or by dialing 323-522-5641. Send us an email at missionlog@roddenberry.com. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log. Now repeat after me, John. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. And give the audience this week's trivia.
Okay, I think I can do it. Afterimage was written by Rene Echevarria, and this was an interesting assignment for Rene since he started work on the story before the previous 2 episodes had been filmed, and he didn't know who this new Dax was going to be. He knew that this episode would have to serve very specific purposes, and he set about crafting a story that would get this new counselor Dax on her feet. It wasn't coming together, though, and it only did once Renee met Nicole DeBoer and got a better handle on who this new character would be. The old draft went out the window, and what we have here is something where the development of Garak takes second place to the development of Dax. More on that in a moment. It was directed by Les Landau. Hey, it's time to say goodbye to Les Landau from DS9. You will recall that he goes way back to the very beginning of TNG when he was first assistant director on the pilot Encounter at Farpoint, and then he got his break to direct when he had to pick up the pieces from Code of Honor after Russ Mayberry's departure. He would direct 22 episodes of TNG in addition to his first AD work on that show, and then he jumped over to DS9 in its first season by directing Progress. He stayed with DS9 a total of 14 episodes. This one is his last, but he still puts in a few appearances on Voyager's credits and again on Enterprise. Well, what are the normal things that I point out in trivia? Let's see. Ship names. Well, we have mentioned before of the USS Destiny, but still no screen time for her, so we'll just have to leave that one up to everybody's imagination. And no location shots in this episode because, well, we burned up a lot of those in the last couple of episodes. So that brings us to guest stars, and we don't have any guest stars outside of our recurring characters. Now, back to that whole story there about Renee developing the story and the script. It is worth noting that from the outset, this was going to be an episode that featured Andy Robinson as Garak quite prominently. In one draft, Garak even survived a secret mission by hiding in a torpedo tube, which further exacerbated his claustrophobia. With Nicole DeBoer now on board fully as Ezri Dax, it became necessary to shift the story focus a bit more to her journey, but still use the good material that had been developed for Garak.
Time for everyone to get to know Dax all over again. There is no way this will be awkward at all.
Prologue. Ezri Dax is trying to acclimate herself to life on DS9. There's a conversation with Morn, a stop by the Bajoran temple where Jadzia was killed. Finally, a stop at the bar, where she confides in Quark that she's leaving the station for a position on the Destiny. Too many confusing memories here, too many difficult relationships to let others mend. And right on cue, in walks Worf, who, seeing Ezri, turns on his heels right back to the door. Act 1. When Ezri stops by to see Captain Sisko, it's the same concern. She's out of place on DS9, and Worf is making it even more difficult by not talking to her, not even acknowledging her. Sisko says he'll miss the old man. In Quark's bar, Bashir, O'Brien, and Odo are discussing the next holosuite adventure, who will play Crockett, who will play Tubbs. Travis. Different simulation. They ask Garrick when they can stop by for their costumes, but he says the shop is closed since he's completely overwhelmed with helping Starfleet decipher Cardassian military-coded messages. Then he snaps as the crowd around him gets closer. He's clearly under some stress. That stress manifests itself physically when Garrick has a panic attack, causing his breathing to become heavy and his heart to start racing. He collapses while working, spotted by Odo, who calls the infirmary. Act 2. Garrick has severe claustrophobia. He has since he was a child, but now it's getting worse. He regretfully informs Captain Sisko that he can't carry on as a codebreaker for the war effort, and instead will have to go hem some pants, as sewing calms him down. There's not a medical solution for him, but what Garrick could use is a counselor. Cut to Ezri Dax, inexperienced assistant counselor in training. Sisko has an assignment for her, and even though she's very green to the job, she does have 300-plus years of lifetime under her belt, regardless whether she has a commission from Starfleet. Reluctantly, she'll see what she can do. What she does is relate to Garrick. She's space sick, most likely because she's holding on to the guilt around the shuttle accident that killed one of her previous hosts. Garrick is hanging on to the guilt and trauma around the punishment his father used to dole out, locking him in a closet until he had learned his lesson. This moment of breakthrough for them both isn't a cure-all, but it is a step in the right direction. Meanwhile, Quark has bent the ear of Dr. Bashir about this new Dax. Doesn't he have some interest in her? Not every day you get a second chance. But to Bashir's point, this isn't the same woman. Finally, on her way down a station corridor, Ezri bumps into Worf. But when she greets him, he coldly calls her ensign and reminds her that Jadzia is dead and moved on to Sto-vo-kor. He has nothing to say to this new Dax. Act 3. Captain Sisko stops by to see Ezri, still space-sick. He has some good news for her, that Garrick is feeling much better. Their little talk must have done some good because he's back on assignment with those Cardassian codes. The lingering problem now is Worf. Sisko offers to have a talk with him, but Ezri says the Klingon is intimidated by the captain, much to Sisko's amusement. But Sisko is there for something else. He has spoken to Starfleet about the special circumstance they're in, and Ezri's qualification as a joined Trill. If she wants it, she can have a full commission and the rank of lieutenant. Later, Bashir catches Dax in the replimat. She's having trouble deciding what to order, but he smoothly steps in with an order of finale and toddies. Hot. She's a little uncomfortable with the idea that he used to flirt with Jadzia, but she knows he misses her and offers a friendly hand to hold while they process all of this. A moment seen by Worf, who is, not amused. This uncomfortable moment interrupted by an emergency call to the doctor. It's about Garrick, who has entered an airlock and is desperately trying to force his way into outer space. Act 4. Cooler heads have prevailed, and Garrick now sits in a peaceful holosuite simulation with Ezri. He knows he has to get his claustrophobia under control, and he just asks for some time to himself. Over in the infirmary, Bashir assists Quark by removing an errant feather from a tympanic tickle just when Worf enters, and he is not one with a cooler head. He straight up threatens the doctor and Quark about dishonoring Jadzia's memory by befriending Ezri. Speaking of Ezri, she stops by Garrick's to find him hard at work, forcefully working with fabric and not Cardassian secret transmissions. She's just checking in on him, but he explodes, resentful that she would presume to help him when she is just a shadow of Jadzia. Distraught, Ezri leaves, heading into the Bajoran temple, where she breaks down in tears. Act 5. It's too much. Ezri Dax presents her resignation to Captain Sisko because she can't take it anymore. He goes the tough love route, saying that after 8 amazing lives for the Dax symbiont, maybe it's all right if the 9th one was a waste. This one doesn't deserve the uniform. He'll pass along the resignation, and she is dismissed. Checking in on Worf, it's O'Brien with a bottle of blood wine from the doctor, and no shortage of the right words to put Worf in his place. There's nothing going on between Bashir and Ezri, and by shunning Ezri like this, Worf is being extremely disrespectful to her and to Jadzia's memory. He's got to talk to Ezri, because the Dax part of her knows exactly how Jadzia would want Worf to treat her. But Ezri has something else on her hands right now. She stops by the tailor shop to tell Garak that she's leaving. She's going back to Trill, but she wanted him to know that the Destiny is heading to Kalandra to engage in an attack on the Cardassian fleet there, all because Garak was able to provide the intelligence that that's where they'll be. The news is difficult for Garak. He explodes again, and the true source of his anguish this time comes out. He's a traitor. He's responsible for passing along the decoded transmissions to Starfleet that will save humans, Romulans, Klingons. But what about his people? They'll fight to the bitter end, and they'll die, all because of him. And then, in another attack, Garak collapses to the floor. Later in the infirmary, Garak confides in Ezri that he's glad she helped him find the source of his problem. He says, though, that he'll get back to work. He knows the Dominion has to be stopped, no matter what. And as for Ezri, she tells Garak that she's changed her mind about going to Trill. She'll stay with Starfleet. But when she brings her request for reinstatement to Captain Sisko, he rejects it. He can't submit it because he never submitted the resignation in the first place. See? He knows her. But staying in Starfleet doesn't mean staying on Deep Space Nine. Later in her quarters, Ezri is packing her things to go off to the Destiny when Worf stops by. He's apologetic in his way, saying that he knows he hasn't treated her the way Jadzia would have wanted, and he does know that Jadzia would not have wanted her to leave DS9 because of him. If she stays, Worf will need some room, though, to deal with what has happened. Ezri understands. Cut to the wardroom, where Ezri Dax is receiving her pips to become a lieutenant in Starfleet and the much-needed counselor of Deep Space Nine. Everyone is there, welcoming Ezri with open arms as part of the crew. Everyone except for one. Then, in a corner, Ezri sees Worf, who quietly raises his tankard of blood wine toward her. The end.
Wonderful job on the wrap-up, John. And I just wanted to start off here with, so you were talking about her, him.
Pronouns.
Right.
Pronouns. Yes. She, they have the line in the script. These pronouns are going to drive me crazy. And yes, there is a line from the late 90s that has more relevance now as we record in the early 21st century. And I just want to say it's okay for Ezri to be confused about what to say when. She's working on it. They're working on it. All of them are working on it. So good for them. Good for all of them.
Yeah, that struck me the same way, too, because I think I took it in context, obviously, for the vernacular of today, but obviously she was referencing her previous hosts in Sisko's Ready Room.
Yeah.
One of the things, I don't know why it stood out to me so much. Maybe it's because it's just antiquated looking in the Cardassian office that he's appropriated, but there was this really wonderful model of a Daedalus class starship.
Yes, and
on one side of the office.
Right. I've always loved that type of ship because, of course, that was one of the original Matt Jeffries designs for the Enterprise, with that big globe in front before they settled
when it was still the Yorktown.
Yes. So I love that. And in this episode in particular, you got a really nice wide shot of Sisko's room there. It looks so cool. And you see the ISS in there as well. The International Space Station, at least a version of it, is in there.
And I think on the far side of it, later on in the episode, was a Miranda-class starship.
Yep.
I do believe.
Good call.
Yeah.
Good call. I do, it was a good scene at the top where we're revealing Garak's problem when he's talking to the guys, Bashir and O'Brien and Odo. By the way, I love how they include Odo in it. It's just so nice. Like
who am I again? Who am I? What am I doing?
Santa Ana, okay. There's just so much growth for Odo, and he really just feels like part of the team instead of the outsider, and it's cool. It's so great to see. But I like that reveal about what's going on with Garak and the crowding and everything around him, because, yes, I have felt very much like Garak from time to time in a crowded bar. Funny, though, it seems like all of that is happening directly at Garak's back, and pretty much if you just turn the camera around, the bar is empty. Otherwise, it's like, why are these people just standing right there, right up against Garak?
Every single time they cut to the chief, there's like nobody in the bar.
Nobody at all.
So Garak could have said, could you just move your party?
Yes.
On the other side of the bar?
Yes. Exactly.
I don't know. Maybe there was something hot going on.
Yeah.
Like hot Dabo table or something.
Could be.
Yeah. The handheld device that Garak has to sew his fabric, what is he using as the material to sew with? Because it's just a light that's being projected on the material. So is he like molecularly bonding material, or is it like transparent aluminum thread? What exactly is he doing?
That's it. Yeah, it's wild, right? Because, of course, in a sci-fi show, whenever you need to telegraph to the audience that this is a piece of space futuristic equipment, you put a light on it. So he's got a space sewing machine, just like Worf has the space sharpener for his batleth. That's just a thing with a light.
I love that
Isn't
much.
it great? It looks so good. Although, I love seeing that prop. I wanted to hear it do something. Like I wanted to hear metal,
like a scraping sound, like a whetstone.
Right. Even though it's a light, but I wondered that too. Because you could still just replicate whatever you want, but there he is doing something by hand, but with a light. Oh, and I do have to say that speaking of Garak, it is such good payoff for something that was revealed about him way back when. You remember back during that trilogy when he was helping everyone escape the Dominion internment camp that culminated in By Inferno's Light. You just plant that little seed there about what's going on with him. Really has some value to pay off here.
Well, especially if they stuck to the original plan and put him in that torpedo casing, as you mentioned in the trivia. That harkens back when he was in that enclosed space trying to contact the runabout. In that scene, when they were incarcerated on that asteroid.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens, though, from time to time, and we've spotted this on Cardassian makeup, when Ezri first sees Garak in his shop, the tonal difference between his facial application and his hands are completely different.
Yeah, and you can tell, sometimes the transfer on DS9 to video and for streaming isn't all that great and all that sharp. You could really tell in a few scenes here, and it could just be because they lit that area brighter. But did notice that. I do want to give them stylistic points here. Great, that scene with Sisko and Ezri. So, what are you going to learn? How to keep from breaking into tears for no reason, and how to resist the urge to stand on my head. Great lines, first of all. But I love the way that scene was shot and blocked. Just getting Sisko down on the ground at eye level with her, it made it so fun and so personal. Such a nice little, because any less inspired director would just have him standing there and shoot it wide. And but getting him down on the floor, it relaxed the scene and it relaxed Sisko.
And also, though, I just want to interject here. We've made mention time to time where we felt like sometimes laughter is forced in certain character reactions. I thought Avery's laugh when he busted out laughing about how he intimidates Worf was so genuine.
Yes, that was one of the best moments for him when they try to bring some humor out of him. That one really worked. And honestly, across the series, the Sisko and Jadzia scenes had been among the best up until now, and the Sisko Ezri scenes here are great too. So even simple moments like I told you so, and that reveal that Worf is intimidated, it's all great stuff, and it just felt personal and driven by character, which is why that laugh felt genuine and driven by character, not because you're forcing a joke. But I got to say, man, Worf just always walking into the wrong place at the wrong time. Like any time in this episode you needed to have him in the wrong place, he was there. Like catching Bashir and Dax holding hands in the replimat. I mean, what a looming creep. We usually don't see him in the replimat anyway, but that one time, there he is.
I figure on a station that small gives moments like this like a lot of credence when when Ezri wants to leave the station, because there are only so many square feet that they can walk. Sooner or later, they're going to, run into each other, as they did in the hallway, which was very awkward.
Well, look, there are only so many places that they're actively working, and going from ops to the promenade to the replimat to Quarks, whatever. But don't forget, that station is huge. You can park however many dozen Galaxy-class starships there. Worf could have himself beamed to another end of that station and not see anybody for a week. But they do have to work together. So we'll get into the challenges of that in a moment, for sure.
Speaking of the aftermath of that scene where he catches Bashir and Dax together, isn't there some kind of regulation where an officer, after he assaults another officer, is breaking some type of Starfleet reg somewhere?
You would think. Somebody's going to get written up for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man, Garrick, now get out of here before I say something unkind. Oh, shivers up my spine. Yeah. Right? Wow. So good. I mean, for a guy who got so many great lines anyway, he just absolutely chewed the scenery all over this episode. And I do have to say, Captain Sisko, way to pile on when someone is feeling down. I mean, talk crap about the people who take care of the symbiont pools. First of all, that seems a little out of step. Everybody has to have a job. And then he busts out that old, you don't deserve to wear that uniform line. Not that you should be casting aspersions about that, Benjamin Sisko. Just drop that right there. Yeah.
Now, I was going to jump all over that scene in discussion, but as it played out, I understand. It resolved the way I wanted it to resolve.
Sure.
That line.
Yeah.
But at the moment I was watching it, I'm like, oh, boy.
Yeah.
Clackety, 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 clack on my keyboard.
Right. And I will say, it's so long overdue, but I'm glad that we've leaned into a friendship with Worf and O'Brien, since they have the longest history together. A good follow-up here from what we saw before, finally. Yeah.
Okay, so usually I don't timestamp my observations, but I have to just for the audience's sake if you want to see it. But the moment they start applauding Ezri after she gets her promotion, there's Kira is standing on the screen left side of the scene, and you can clearly see her applauding human style as opposed to Bajoran style.
Oh, with her palms together and not
palms together
back.
Instead of
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
And they've been very consistent about having her use that cultural that cultural expression, the Bajoran backwards applause, and we've always made mention of that when it happens. But this time, I guess, sometimes you just don't catch that in editing, or you don't catch that in the scene, or they're just running like, hey, we got to get the scene done. So there was that. It was just one of those gaffes, that I was like, is she clapping human style? That's kind of cool.
Right. Oh,
speaking of human style, Jake, what's up? Jake's like, hey,
yeah. She's kind of cute.
Yeah. But you know what? That's totally in the ballpark for his for where he is right now as a young man. But I do think that maybe the only reason why that Benjamin was trying to wave him off is because could you imagine the pillow talk between Jake and Dax? And if Benjamin got brought up in some of that, that could be awkward.
Benjamin has every reason to not want that to go any further. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, but my MVP prop for this episode is the Klingon blood wine cup. Because we start off the episode with a blood wine cup, and Ezri doesn't like blood wine, and then we end the episode with a toast with the blood wine cup.
Yeah,
I love that cup.
Yeah.
Right?
You need one, huh? Well,
I mean, even, I guess, blood wine itself is kind of like a through line throughout the course of this episode because it was one of Dax's favorites, Jadzia's.
Yeah.
Ezri says that she doesn't like it. The chief makes a peace offering with it, and then Worf toasts. I presume it's blood wine in the blood wine cup at the end.
Oh, it has
and makes
to
a
be.
toast, and kind of starts forging a peace.
Yes.
Towards her with that toast.
See, blood wine, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
Everyone is excited to have a new counselor, and yet O'Brien talks Worf down off his ledge. Somehow, he lives to tell the tale.
We will get back to Afterimage in just a second, but first of all, a thank you to you, our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/missionlog. We have a ball over there. First of all, we release to you the unedited, unexpurgated recording sessions of each show, and we have exclusive access to you for our Discord. Norman, how about our Discord community? Come on, they're amazing.
Oh, I love our Discord community. I love our patrons, and I love everyone who supports what we do here on Mission Log. But having the interaction with all of our friends at the Discord server is something that's very special throughout the course of the week, because we get to learn a little bit more about them. Their fandoms, whether it is Star Trek or other things in the science fiction milieu, or even just in fandom in general, and especially food, because our food and beverages channel on Discord it's pretty substantial.
It's a hot thread. I mean, yeah, it is a hot thread. And by the way, speaking of our Discord, look, I have heard that the Mission Log computer has been reading the Discord. Okay? So I'm not saying who, I'm not saying how this information came to me, I'm not saying what, I'm just saying that there might be some influences happening there. We need to have a technician look into it, but it's happening. Okay.
Well, as long as our computer isn't, talking to the M5 or Nomad,
then we should be okay.
Yeah.
I also want to give a shout out to some of our latest Patreon subscribers: Andrew, Taylor, Subwrote, Patrick, Cam, Tim, Alec. Thank you all for joining us very recently, and we hope that you stick around and enjoy everything that we do there. So, Norman, what's that address again for people to come find us?
That is patreon.com/missionlog.
So, Norman, Afterimage. I feel like there are so many directions we could talk about. This is a very personal episode. This is a very character-driven episode of DS9, really in the best possible ways. And, I kind of come across with this theme in here. Everybody got issues. Everybody got issues.
Sure.
And that is sort of the great equalizer of this episode. It's interesting that over time, over the last 6+ seasons, we've been able to get deeply into some of our characters in our lives, like O'Brien, like Kira, and Odo as well. Odo has seen such incredible growth over the last 6 seasons. Benjamin Sisko, well, still sort of something to explore there, because he's still trying to find his place and his purpose. But here we get to take on really 3 characters at the same time. Garak, of course, our new Dax, Ezri, and Worf, and all going through something pretty intense and pretty life-altering. So I just kind of, no particular order here. I want to give a call out to something that we already mentioned, and that's these scenes with Garak and Ezri Dax. And in particular, 2 scenes where Garak is just lashing out at her. It is intense, and I think what makes it is just that it's so believable. Every bit of the psychological issues that are going on here, even though the setting is fantastical, even though the conceit is science fiction, the character motivations are just so believable and relatable. In Garak's case, very much a situation that people who need help sometimes take the opposite path and absolutely lash out at those who could help them. And that's something that we see here. And interesting that it is him because he brings all this other baggage of having been a spy, part of the Obsidian Order, which is already in a culture that places him squarely at odds with ever telling the truth about anything, much less himself.
Right. Yeah. One thing I really enjoyed about this pairing, and this is a strength to the writers and choosing to put them two together, Garak and Ezri, is that we know Garak. We know that Garak is an operative of the Obsidian Order or a former operative. He knows how to probably juggle 5, 6, maybe half a dozen personalities and aliases all at once, because that's his job. That's who he is trained to do. And to have this very green, very unsure, very fresh, wide-eyed, naive person just stroll into his life, you would think that he would be able to just tie her up in so many different truths or half-truths or lies and just be done with her. But he doesn't. He doesn't.
Yeah, and I wondered if it was just because, her innocence, her newness, her vulnerability was completely disarming to him because he wouldn't necessarily know how to deal with that. He's always dealing with what's on this kind of top-level, deep intelligence, thinking strategically. She comes in and completely undermines that without any agenda to do that. That's just sort of who she is. And I think what was great about how this was structured is that you leave this teaser here about, well, he's claustrophobic because his father did this to him, and he was locked up in a closet, and then he even downplays that. He's just like, oh, so that's it. I'm cured. You figured it out. We're done here. And we know as the audience that can't be the entire truth. that absolutely, just as he's saying, no, this is too easy. It's too simple. So then you follow that with this even bigger reveal of what's been eating him. And it's another super powerful scene. And it's just such great payoff for how far we've come with Garak. He has played so much on the surface with the intent of deceiving you. And then here is actually a moment of true vulnerability. And it is completely understandable that here's somebody whose loyalties are completely at odds. And it makes perfect sense as the culmination of everything we know about him. I thought that was structured so perfectly for him.
But the 3 characters, or at least 2 out of 3 characters that you mentioned, end up becoming in some way, shape, or form a counselor for the counselor.
Yes.
Because what Garak did for Ezri, I think that he at least informed her that not everything is as it seems, and not everything is, wrapped up in something that is very neat and compact and easily solvable. These things, the problems are very deep that people have, especially with Garak and especially with Worf. So it's their interactions with her and how they respond to a little bit of her sheepishness that make her grow throughout the course of this episode, that make her challenge herself and to confront that which puts her at odds with everybody or keeps people at a distance. So I think that there's something to be said about that kind of education that she's receiving versus the one line that actually kind of grated on me a little bit in this episode of always either Cisco telling her this or other characters telling her this, that she has 8 lifetimes of experience over 300 years worth of life experience. But life experience does not equate one-to-one to a trained professional, healer, or professional.
Right.
So I think that maybe she was depending too much on believing that as opposed to learning exactly what these people are going through, what they've been through, and how I'm going to try and insert myself in there with these life experiences that she has no control over.
Right. Yeah, that is a bit presumptuous of certainly of Cisco and the others around her, saying like, oh yeah, you can do this, and I just told Starfleet to fast track you. That's okay, wait a minute, you've had a little bit of training, but there is still training that is necessary. There is still technique that is necessary to develop. Fortunately, yes, we know that Dax is going to be okay. We know that she's going to be be a part of the crew here because that's how this show will work. But there is a big amount of assumption and presumption on their part. I want to talk about Worf here a little bit because I know that we've given him a lot of grief, and deservedly so. I just want to point out in his journey on DS9, and you even go back to Worf stories on TNG when Mission Log covered them, and yeah, we gave Worf some grief then too. And I think it would be really easy to lay it on him here as well, but I think I need to lead with a bit of sympathy for him here. He is in the most bizarre situation that you could possibly imagine. And yes, again, this is a sci-fi conceit where, okay, it's the dead wife who isn't really dead because a part of her lives as a symbiotic memory in someone else. Okay, yes, that is the sci-fi conceit. But again, you get to the moments that have an emotional honesty through that. And I love O'Brien taking him to task and saying, wrong, treating Ezri like a stranger dishonors Jadzia's memory. Worf needed that slap in the face. And finally, at the end, you get to Worf being able to admit, saying it will be a long time before I can accept what has happened. That's all he needed to say early on to Ezri. But at the same time, I think we have to be very sympathetic for his emotional journey here. Make it something simpler and more real world and relatable. Your relationship with people changes over time. Could have had a close, friendly, or romantic bond with somebody. That changes, it dissolves, it takes another course, but then you still have to work with that person. You still have to interact with that person in some way. Or it could just be an interfamilial relationship that changes, and then you still have to learn how to cope. I think it's asking a lot, and it's very easy for outsiders to be able to say, like, oh, well, you just need to go talk. You just need to go. You just need to go work this out. Just go do that.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to actually accept the idea that sometimes the discomfort, the displacement is so profound, so tough that you don't actually have the words. You don't actually have those social skills to be able to figure out how to approach. How do you even begin that conversation? I've been in similar situations, more recently than I'd like to admit, where suddenly, a relationship goes one way, then it takes a left turn, and you don't know how then to relate. And sometimes it is purely just time. You might feel like a jerk for not being able to open up and have that friendly conversation, but that's part of the human emotional experience.
Yeah. And the thing is with Worf is I found his behavior in this episode very consistent to what we've seen, say, in Shadows and Symbols, because when it came to a point when it had to deal with protecting Jadzia's memory, he lashed out at Quark and at Bashir and at O'Brien on the Rataran. And he did the exact same thing in this episode, and I wanted to take points away from him for that, the same way I wanted to dock points from Sisko, giving Ezri that hard love moment in dressing her down when she wanted to leave Starfleet. But then it resolved very quickly. It didn't linger on in the episode. It resolved in the way that I wanted it to, where Worf really came to terms with why he was having such a struggle with dealing with Ezri. And I think it's because of this. I think it's because rarely, if ever, will we ever see the chance where someone's living memory actually is so. We want people that we've lost to live on in our memories and in our hearts and in the minds and the hearts and the spirit of other people, how they remember this person that we've lost. But now you actually have a person on the station who does embody those memories, who is living in the present. So how do you reconcile that? You think, at least Worf does. Worf thought that he put that to bed when he brought her to Stovacor, when he risked his life for that mission. That was it. That was the ceremony. It was wrapped up. He was able to tie off his feelings and be done with it and move on. But he can't, because every single time he may have a conversation with Ezri, something that Jadzia said or did will trigger him again. And I'm not, and he doesn't know how to deal with that. Very much like how Bashir was, and this isn't even creepy Bashir. This was just when he was looking deep into Ezri's eyes, he said that you have Jadzia's eyes. There's something, and I don't know if it was a conscious decision for Nicole to do this, to study Terry's style and her nuances, but to pick up on those and incorporate that in her performance. Because there were times where even I was watching Ezri and I was like, wow, she is really channeling a lot of Jadzia's, more nuanced expressions. Yeah. And that's like, if you translate that in real time with the way that she would interact with Worf, that could be devastating to somebody, to see someone who's that close to somebody that you love or loved be right there present in front of you. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's too simplistic, and not that I've heard this criticism necessarily on this episode, because, well, I've avoided criticism and commentary on this episode until we do our show. But I would think that if it exists, it's entirely too simplistic to say Bashir is being creepy, Worf is being a jerk. No, there are incredibly complex emotions at play here, and particularly when you introduce this idea of somebody who is back, and back in a different form, but with still some of those character attributes, some of those aspects of who you knew before. Again, this isn't something that none of us will encounter in our real lives, but the idea of someone being out of your life, coming back into your life, their relationship to you changing, your relationship to them changing, that is a profound thing. And for some, it is much more difficult to get past than for others. It sort of depends on the depth and the length of that relationship to begin with.
I think the other thing, though, that I really wish they have addressed. I mean, Sisko kind of got around to it a little bit, but in a more disparaging way, talking about the symbiosis element of Trill Society and the pools, and helping those symbionts kind of like, grow and mature. But I still think that there's something to be said about not addressing the whole symbiote program that thrust Ezri into this whole new life, where I thought there was supposed to be a lot of training involved, and you're supposed to be chosen, and you're supposed to be kind of reared and trained into the position of being a host. I remember there was a huge conversation between Dax and Curzon, she thought that Jadzia didn't deserve the symbiont, and Curzon's like, I was just being hard on you because I knew how good you could be.
Yeah.
So there's all of that just kind of like being left to the side when it comes to how Ezri is dealing with being on this station and being confronted with so many people who knew who she previously was and how to deal with those feelings in the present.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to talk about Ezri's journey here herself. I mean, it's so... we mentioned it last week when we really got to know her a bit more, being introduced into the series. And she has, it's this very charming sort of like awkward new kid at school vibes, but there's so much going on there. Again, it would have been too simplistic to just sort of leave the character with that. Her sense of not belonging and not being good enough and just wanting to go away are very valid and relatable. And having those moments that didn't feel forced, didn't feel melodramatic, when she just can't hold it in anymore, has to go on her own and let it out emotionally, I thought were very true to this story and very true to this character. And look, it is a bit of a cliche that she resigns, but then her XO doesn't submit the resignation because he knows better. I mean, of course, what would happen if she actually went through with it? Could Sisko have retroactively submitted the resignation? I don't know. But regardless, it is so believable to see Ezri Dax try to navigate what she's been given. She has every right to want to go back to these relationships, but also every right to want to get away from them and start over. I think the play there is so difficult. Clearly, Curzon becoming Jadzia was able to find a new relationship with Sisko, and that was great, and that has served the story well up until now. So it's not out of the question that a new Dax, that Ezri Dax would sort of feel the same way. Well, maybe I can go then have a new relationship, a new friendship with Bashir and O'Brien and Kira and everybody else that I worked with and knew. But then there's Worf. And Worf's emotions run deep and are going to run in a different direction because of partly who he is and the very specific relationship that they had.
This episode tells us what makes Garak tick. I'm sure the next time he appears, he'll be back to ticking rather worryingly like a time bomb.
Well, John, we've made it, and I think that we're okay. I don't think that we need to breathe in or breathe out any more deeply than we already have during the course of this episode.
I don't know, man. I could always go for that.
It is nice, though.
I'm a wreck.
You know, it is nice being able to stare off into the sunset, even though that we know that there is a wall behind it that's just projecting holographic beams. But that's all beside the point, though. So after Image, we are at the end, where we usually wrap up and talk about, does this episode withstand the test of time? Does it hold up? And what are the morals, meanings, and messages? So let's start with you, John. If you're ready, if you want to share with us, let's hear what you have to say.
Okay, summoning it up from my emotional depths. I'll make this short and sweet. I'll say that I was prepared to not love this episode the first time that I watched it. As I was going along with the story in my first watch, I felt like all the beats were predictable, and it was purely a transition piece to get to the new Dax and just get her justified and settled on board. And it's a very soap opera episode. We've talked about that before, where DS9 has this sometimes tendency to veer into soap opera because you have all of these complex character connections. And I felt like the reactions of the people around her were played to a bit of an extreme that didn't always sit well with me. That was at first. That was my first viewing. The more I watched this episode, I appreciated that this was absolutely the episode that we needed right here at this point in the series, and it covers a lot of emotional ground. And look, even if those beats are predictable, there was something at the end that was just very satisfying about that. We as an audience, we knew where we had to get with these characters, and we did. And it felt very from the heart. It felt very human, even though these aren't necessarily human characters. They are representative of human emotions and human types. So that's fine, too. So it felt honest. And there's something about that. Norman, you and I have talked about before the idea of the spoiler not always necessarily being a spoiler. When you know what's coming, that can actually lend better appreciation and understanding of a story. And I had that experience with this one. Getting through it the first time, getting through the plot, and then just being able to go back and knowing where I was headed made me appreciate all the character stuff so much more. So I absolutely love this episode. I think the performances are great. I think the story is just, it's simplistic, but it's simplistic because it needs to be, and it is served well by being simple. So yes, I definitely like this one. I would recommend it. I will watch it again. How about you?
I think we're on similar tracks here, because I too, when I first watched it, and Mission Log fans know that John and I watch each one of these episodes multiple times, and for the first time, it's usually just kind of let the story kind of like sink in, let it wash over us organically, and let us see how we react to it from that just first emotional blush. And at the start, I thought it was going to be, this is just one of those woe is me stories where you're going to see Ezri kind of just mope around the station and no one understands her, and she's just going to run into a lot of issues with people that know Jadzia and bring up her past, especially Worf. But then, after subsequent viewings, I started to pay a little bit more attention to where the story was really going, especially several key scenes, especially the scene where she and Sisko had it out about her leaving Starfleet, and most definitely the scene where Garrick really kind of gave her comeuppance when he said that you're not ready to tackle somebody like me. I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, you don't have the right to, inhabit that symbiont. You don't have the right to honor Jadzia's memories in that way, right? Jadzia lived a life of fire, and she the kind of character that would go for the jugular and drain life for all that it had. You're not her.
Yeah.
And as harsh as those two scenes were for Ezri to accept, they were, again, as I mentioned before, counseling the counselor, trying to inform her that this is this life now that you are in, that you are a part of. Whether you chose it or not, this is the reality. So I was watching more for the nuances and the responses of her character. And I think that, like I said before, it's either that Nicole chose to watch Terry's performance and chose to inhabit some of those nuances, or it was just the sheer organic nature of being the new kid on the block and trying to insert herself into this well-established, well-oiled machine that is already Deep Space Nine Season 7. I mean, you're walking into a completely foreign situation with actors and producers and writers who all know each other like family, and now you're supposed to raise yourself up to that bar. That has to be super intimidating, right? So I think she leaned into that, and I think that it helped her inform her performance at times. And I found that very, very, very believable. And that made me pay attention even more to when she interacted with some of the deeper moments of this episode, and it really focused on character. This episode's about character, character, character. It made me fall in love with the episode. I, too, would recommend this episode for anybody to watch. I think that it does hold up to what we think is, the character focus of Star Trek episodes. And without taking another whole podcast, or at least another 20 minutes to espouse my love for Andrew Robinson as Garrick, I will leave my comments there.
Okay, good. Well, I want to know, to me, this is an episode that is about themes. It's about character and emotions, not necessarily the lesson, like here's how you get through life by doing this. But let's talk about morals, meanings, messages. What did you find here to wrap your head around?
Well, there were a couple at the start where, maybe things aren't always as they seem, or buck up, kid, because life is tough. You gotta take life as it comes. Those are all very tropish, and those are all very easy to see, especially when Sisko was tough loving her in his office. He's like, you don't deserve to be Dax. I don't want you in that uniform. You don't deserve any of that. I get that. I'm glad that scene resolved the way I wanted it to. But ultimately, this whole episode, in my opinion, is about forgiveness. So Ezri, Garrick, and Worf are all suffering from various forms of guilt. For Ezri, it's the guilt of feeling that she doesn't deserve the Dax symbiont and the lives that now, and the memories she's responsible for, for being the protector of, right? And then there's Garrick, he's obviously suffering from being a traitor to his people. He's guilty. He feels that guilt that's weighing on him that triggers, his claustrophobic, paralysis. And then you have Worf, he's continually suffering because every time he sees Ezri, he sees Jadzia and doesn't know how to make peace with the woman who carries her soul and her memories on a daily basis. So they all are suffering this survivor's guilt, and they all have to find a way to forgive themselves and move forward with their lives. And I think that's something that's very relatable to us as the audience. There are those of us who struggle with shedding past mistakes, and there are those of us who struggle with the inability to forgive ourselves because in some way it's some type of, it's self-imposed punishment because we don't want to forgive ourselves for enjoying our lives and for the people that we lost not being able to enjoy that with us anymore.
Yeah.
That's very real. That's a very human characteristic, and that's something that it's very hard to, and it's a struggle to get through to this day. And as much as it pains us, and I don't want to seem glib about it, but you have to move forward. You have to be able to forgive yourself because tragedy happens in life. And sometimes it's not of our own making. And just like Ezri's situation, it's not of her own making. She was thrust into a situation where she can't forgive herself for inhabiting or inheriting this robust 8 lives that she now has to contend with and try and find a way to carve out her own path. So, I mean, with Garrick, that was imposed by Anabran. And with Worf, that was because of Jadzia was, murdered by Gul Dukat. Even so, though, they all have to find ways, much like we have to find ways, to be able to reconcile and heal and move forward and let that inform our character. That gives us growth. That gives us purpose. And that gives us a different layer in our lives. And I think that eventually will enrich us. How about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, I think forgiveness is such a strong theme here. It's about self-forgiveness. It's also about forgiveness of others, for the ability to just move on with your life and be able to be the person that you could and should be. I also think, there's a... this is funny. Let me preface this bit by saying that we got an email not too long ago from someone who is speculating that maybe we were wrong about the idea that Deep Space Nine did not have counselors, because surely counselors are everywhere in Starfleet, and some are high-ranking, some are low-ranking, but surely they're just out there everywhere. We just haven't seen them because we don't have a particularly high-ranking one on board the station the way we did with, say, Deanna Troi on the Enterprise, and this is to say that, yes, we get all of your emails. It's worth repeating, reiterating. We don't always get to respond to all of those emails. try as we might, but there's a lot of it, and some of them, as this one was, very thoughtful and very thorough and very detailed. But we got to this point in this episode where it's pretty apparent there is no counselor on Deep Space Nine. Sisko basically says to Ezri, yeah, look, you're not experienced, but now you're responsible for the mental health of everybody here. And finally, it drives home this thing that we've been talking about, which is to say that counselors, not just those, not just reserved for those fancy Galaxy-class starships anymore. Everybody benefits. Everybody should have them. I have to now assume that there are other places that don't have counselors or easy access to counselors. They could really use them. So thank goodness we have Ezri on board. And, we talked about that in The Sound of Her Voice, the idea that even if it is an unlikely or unofficial person who is that voice, to be able to ask good questions, to be able to console, to be able to confront when some of those emotions need a little bit of confrontation, that they're there, that you have that sounding board. So I love it when a show like this can really show those benefits in an unconventional way. And just show that, yes, everybody, as you so well put, Norman, that even the counselor needs a counselor from time to time. And I also want to come back to this idea, because I have taken many shots at Worf over the months, over the years, that there is a little bit of sympathy to be found here for Worf, because he comes to this realization that, sometimes you got to talk it out, sometimes you got to act it out, sometimes you got to do something cathartic and get it out of your system, and other times you just need room to breathe. And he expresses that, and he is given that here. So there is something, a bit of a breakthrough for him. And for Worf, as with many people, there's not necessarily a right or wrong way to feel your emotions, but you do have to confront and deal with them, and we just hope that that is done in a positive and beneficial way.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. If you would like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. And for more Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, take me out to the holosuite.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers Adam Brusky, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Mike Richards, and Mike Schabel. All of this emotional turmoil makes me appreciate the calming presence of Morn that much more. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.